Do you think he's going to be president next cycle?
I'm actually pretty optimistic for Biden. I think DeSantis is. I don't think he has the charisma, and I think there's a possibility that he and Trump kind of tear each other apart a little bit. Like, because a lot of people in the establishment GOP want DeSantis to
Good to
win.
see infighting.
Oh,
It's good to see infighting between
love to
them.
see it. Yeah, love to see it. And they did badly in the midterms too, so
Yeah.
maybe there's some positive here.
Biden is like, for all like the shit that he gets, it's like I don't think anybody's going against him on the Democrat side. I think he's got some solidarity from what I've seen, at least.
Just Marianne Williamson.
Um,
That's it.
yeah, except like on the right, like on the right Republican side, it's like you've got that DeSantis guy who's like, despite being half the age of the other candidates, he's like dead inside already, which is
Oh yeah, he
insane.
has less energy and charisma than anyone else in the field, including Biden. Genuinely, I mean that. I don't know.
And he's also having a war with the biggest job provider in his state, right? Like Disney right now.
Americans
So,
listen. There's nothing more American than like Disney-controlled media. The fact that he's running for president off of this, absolutely insane. I don't think he has a chance. Have you heard of RFK Jr. running in the Dems?
no, I haven't heard of him.
Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., the latest Kennedy to throw his hat into the ring. I don't think he has a chance in hell, but apparently he's like a conspiracy theorist. I haven't looked that much into him.
Oh my God! Wait, I heard about him and like Trump or something. Some article together. I did know that he was against vaccines. Yeah,
Yeah, he
like
also
he's like an
looks
actual
very weird.
anti-vax.
He looks like he's being weakened at Bernie. His eyes are not the same elevation. I don't know. He's got a fucked up look to him.
I mean, he's a Mass Effect like character, like right now,
He's
like
he's like
fucking
he's a
something I did not
Kennedy,
want
you
him
know?
out. Yeah.
Product of inbreeding or some kind of genetic experimentation, to be sure. I barely looked into him, but bad vibes to be sure.
It's just so insane how like when I see the like right side of the US, like the Republican side now, it's like, dude, you got like it used to be Trump. I could have like seen him being a president again because, it's just that side has become so militant in terms of their politics, but now you've got like this DeSantis guy. The infighting is just amazing to see because it's like you guys are yourself at the end, right? Like it's kind of the same thing I would say with the 2016 election when you had like Hillary and then you had like a bunch of other or Democrat candidates. Almost kind of like that in a sense because you had too much choice. Now here you have one or the other, and honestly, neither is good. But it's so glad that they're killing each other in the ring.
Well,
Like
really,
I see.
we're helped here that Trump's not a team player, right? Because he's never gonna like, he's not going to work to like, multilaterally navigate the primary playing field in a way that keeps
Mhm.
everyone's feelings intact. He's going to tear
Well,
into everyone through.
Trump is no matter what, he's a complete extremist in his like views, right? He's not going to capitulate to the. He's not going to be a moderate like right winger. He's going to be like full far, like he's going to cater to the QAnons and all those people to the end of the days.
In a way, he's
Like,
not even a politician, really, because politicking, right? It's the wheeling and
mhm,
dealing, and it's the like dishonesty and the selective truth and the making like compromises to preserve a broader goal. But he's just pro him. So he's
mhm.
basically just like a narcissist in the role of a politician, which is very funny. I mean, it's great for the GOP, I think, considering that a lot of people now want DeSantis to take the lead. It's really going to tear them up.
I just don't even know that DeSantis guy is going to do anything. The guy just is like he wants to be like Trump, but without any charisma whatsoever. So the one thing that Trump has that helps him out, you just don't possess. Like, I know one of my buddies. He's from here, so he's a trans person, and like he was telling me all about like these Florida laws that they're passing, and I'm like, I looked into them. I'm like, how is it that like the LGBT relations in the country have dropped so low?
It's pretty bad over
Maybe
there.
like
The,
maybe I was younger and like I usually thought that we were kind of moving past this when like gay marriage and like a lot of these laws were nationally like erected, and now it's just like they want to take all of that away. Like these Target videos that are coming out are so cringe to watch because it's just like people showing up destroying these pride like presentations at their stores, and it's like, how do you expect the general person to look at this and side with you? Like you look like you're unhinged.
I mean, in Florida, the state can kidnap your children now if they feel there is a threat that they might be exposed to trans affirming care, which is a totally arbitrary standard legally. It basically means the courts have free reign to take a kid if they think you're like progressive or queer associated. It's gotten really bad over there. I mean, we're seeing that this is, I mean, I know this is like the easiest comparison in the universe to go to, right? But it's like this is like the fascist consolidation, where when you don't have any ideas on how to govern the country or lead people, you
Mhm.
use social issues to distract them from your pro corporate agenda, and like the more that rolls out of control, the more it becomes for the social issues for its own sake. You know, like I genuinely feel like 20 years ago, Republicans would talk about being anti-gay and pro like or like revoking Roe v. Wade or making abortion illegal as a way
Mhm.
to get Christian evangelicals on the side of tax cuts for businesses. But I don't think that's the case anymore. Right now, I think the reactionary politics are the goal in and of themselves. The pro-business stuff is just a way to keep the donors happy. And this, I mean, on the long run with no opposition, this always leads to genocide. So I hope it doesn't work out.
Well, like some of these laws that have come up, like I don't know if this is entirely true, but there was one law that I saw where apparently you can deny healthcare, like a nurse or like a doctor can deny like emergency care to somebody if they're like trans or something, or
Based
you know.
on their sincerely held religious beliefs. So historically, that's always been like court speak for Christians don't have to do this for gay people.
Yeah.
Or but yeah, no, they passed that. Yeah, they can just like an EMT can
How
see
is that
you.
legal? Like, how can a doctor even agree to that medically? Like, that goes against any oath that they take. Like, I had the same discussion with my dad. He's like whatever your political beliefs is, like, if you're a doctor, my dad who is a doctor, he's like, you gotta take care of somebody if they're dying in front of you. What the?
Well, a lot of this stuff is unconstitutional, and it would be
Yeah.
challenged in a higher court, but it's currently a GOP-led higher court, so they're deliberately not there's the only way to get rid of this would be to challenge its constitutionality, and that can't really be done without like a sane higher court to defer to. So, in the meantime, like literally right now, every week, dozens of unconstitutional laws are being passed in Republican states because they know that there's not actually a way to legally challenge them.
It's such a shame that like these people have like these like civil rights era like because I was watching like Hassan's stream and he showed like this state of emergency from like the NAACP about people who are like transgender, like to not, or like, you know, in the LGBTQ sphere, to just not go to Florida or like not go to certain states because
Mhm.
it's just a danger zone for them. And I'm like, man, there's just like I just don't understand how situations have gotten that bad. You know, like it didn't feel like this was the same case. I want to say like 10 years ago, like when I was a teenager, you
Florida
know?
was a purple state a decade ago. Things moved pretty quickly over there.
Well, like I think of when I was a teenager, right? Like back in 2010, 2011, and I'm like, you know, I'm sure there was the same level of hatred for gays back in the day, if more so, if anything. But I don't know, as somebody that grew up watching, you know, like the Young Turks on YouTube because they were like the first channel that showed up in recommendations. I thought we kind of had already moved past this. I thought we moved past this in like 2013, 2014 even. And
Yeah,
now it's just like a full regression back to
I mean, it
fucking
is, right? I mean, same with
yeah.
the Weimar Republic was like the one of the epicenters of progressive
Mhm.
politics back in the 1920s, and it's just, you know, it's you see the reactionary blowback, right? Um,
Mhm.
and I think, yeah, I don't know. Like sometimes this fails, right? Like we saw this with civil rights too, because after after
Mhm.
slavery was gotten rid of, you know, the Ku Klux Klan came about and the Jim Crow laws, and you had this like cyclical backlash where things actually got worse in some spaces for a while because it went from like slave systems to like sundown towns, Ku Klux Klan lynchings, and so on. And eventually they did lose, but there's almost always that blowback. And I think the best way to handle it is just, I guess you always have to accept, like on principle, that no matter how good things may seem, as long as the logic for them to get worse still exists, it can. And right now it is. And I agree with Hassan. I told, like, if you're queer in Florida, like, you should just move out of the state, no matter the cost, no matter what it takes. Like, now is the time to leave.
I mean, it's better than having your rights be eroded away and choosing to continue to do that. But I mean, obviously, moving is a severely
Yeah,
economical issue
yeah,
for a lot of
it
people.
sucks. It's yeah, it's not fair at all. But
Yeah,
it's like shit. Like
yeah.
that's the state, right? I mean, I've been saying like keep your passports updated. If you're in a place where you're not going to be moving soon, if you want to buy guns, you know, hey, there's never been a better time. Just like high level shit like that. But it's horrible that that even seems on the table, right? With how things are going right now, Florida, Ohio, Tennessee, Texas.
Yeah, Texas is pretty bad too. Me and my wife are like, because I'm moving down to the states, so like we just have a few options. It's like we're looking at like Huntington Beach, California. Like that's a beautiful place. We can afford it, but like that's, you know, exception from the norm. I was also looking at Dallas because I was out there. I have some family and everything, but then like, you know, Dallas, right? Like fuck. You're moving out to like, central US, and I don't know.
The
Like
city,
it's
the
it's a
city
tough
of
place to be
Dallas
in.
is progressive. You know, there's
City of Dallas is nice. South Dallas is great. Like South, we had an Airbnb down in like I want to say the gay district or something,
yeah.
because the guy who we were Airbnb from was like an architect, super like you could just tell, right? Like this guy was definitely not like standard Texan politics, but
That's like that in
being
Florida too.
Texas and Texas.
Miami and Orlando are both pretty damn gay. At the very
Yeah.
least, they're certainly not like Bible thumping Republican. It's that contrast between like highly politically active rural areas where all the red, people are, and then like in the blue areas, especially in Florida, because Florida has a very weak Democratic Party. That's why they used
Well,
to
it's
be
like where
purple, and now they're
anytime you
not.
have like people who are like college educated, university educated, like working in high professional fields, like look at where they tend to, just look at their politics at that point,
It's
right?
one of the
Like,
reasons I'm more optimistic about how things are going right now. In the Weimar Republic, actually, university professors tended to side with the Nazis. It seems weird, but
mhm.
like the highly educated in the Weimar Republic were usually of the upper like economic crust, and they had a greater investment in what they perceived to be like a reassertion of German power and national pride. Whereas nowadays, of course, professors are all gay and all the students are gay and everyone with a bachelor's or higher is gay. So it's flipped a little bit.
Yeah, it's just it's so like the thing about it is like looking at the situation of the states. It's like one of the questions I've been asking myself in like the last few weeks. It's like because I've heard like the trans genocide and all. Like I've heard the word genocide probably more than I've ever heard just in 2023, and it kind of feels like this is to put it in a very depressing tone. It's like maybe this is like the start of what like a Nazi Germany kind of looks like, right? Like it starts slow and then like people tend to agree more and more and more. It's a up situation, and I'm kind of like trying to see what parallels exist between like the 40s and like the age we live in nowadays.
For me, the
You find one group of people to demonize like this, and then it goes from there, right?
Yeah, that's generally how it starts, right? For me, the most
Mhm.
direct through line with regards to trans people specifically is there's this tired like, oh, they're grooming the kids thing. This goes back decades. This went back to gays in the 80s, even before
Yeah.
that. But like right now, the line's pretty clear. It's like Ron DeSantis, for example, Ron DeSantis in Florida recently signed into law stuff that would make it easier to give the death penalty to pedophiles, child abusers, sex offenders, if I recall correctly. Now,
Mhm.
okay, like on its own, sure. But then you look at Twitter and it's like they're calling all trans people pedophiles and sex offenders for like being near children. Some states have already passed laws saying that any act of gender non-congruence, like say a man,
Mhm.
biological male, wearing female clothing is something comparable to doing a burlesque show or stripping. So
And
the
that's just like social transitioning, like
yeah,
from what
like
I'm hearing.
anything. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what's the through line here? Well, they're basically saying that being trans is being a groomer and that being a groomer should be met with the death penalty, QED, right? Like we see the line they're drawing, and they're just building the legal platform to get it through, I think.
Yeah. The thing about like the whole like groomer debate too is like I think a lot of like the short form content and like lives of TikTok and a lot of these like channels really play into it a lot because it shows so many out of context clips, right? Like there are some clips like I won't deny like I look at it and I'm like this is kind of weird, right? Like you got a bunch of kids at like what appears to be like a stripper like a strip club, right? Obviously like when you have like the person who isn't so invested in the politics looking at that, it's so easy to sway them into demonizing all these individuals, right? Like it went from like, oh, you were complaining about drag shows, and now you're complaining about the entire movement. You're just pinning these people, even though, like, if you rub two brain cells together, you'd understand that child abuse happens on every end of the spectrum, right? Like, if you were to logically look at it, if you were to like statistically start applying like math to this entire equation, it's
And
just it's a painful thing to say.
if you had an entire like political wing funded by billionaires that was committed to like taking to
Yeah.
the streets and trying to find every possible instance of heterosexual areas where like kids are seeing weird shit, you would get like a billion videos a day because it's a big country. If you look at the numbers we do have to actually like reason out, okay, well, where is the harm happening, Basically, no drag
Mhm.
queens get indicted for any kind of sexually inappropriate behavior, but 5 million Catholic priests, are
Yeah,
uncovered
then you
as
bring that up to
pedophiles.
the
Like,
Matt Walsh guy, and he's like, he'll just downplay that as like
yeah,
nothing
and
happened.
they're like,
It's
yeah,
just-
actually, this is fine though, because like Matt Walsh has literally said that there is not a child rape problem, there's not a pedophile problem in the Catholic Church, there's a gay man problem in the Catholic Church. And so clear what his intentions are. He doesn't give a shit about kids being raped. He just
Well,
cares
none of
about
them
whatever he
care
can do
about
to.
kids.
Yeah,
Like none of
yeah.
them give a shit. It's all like it's a way for them to push their like hatred and bigotry, and then use kids because they're a great emotional vector to push these kind of laws through, right? Like anybody will look at any form of child abuse, and like if you can just paint like a certain group of people the wrong way, it's going to push anybody with the most center leaning beliefs into one side or the other, right? Like even if you even like you bring kids into anything, and it goes to like any form of media, it goes to any form of like, political topic. It's just the easiest way to move people to your
I
side.
just
Like
I just
it's fucking
remember like
insane.
the tone has shifted so much because in my life I've seen so many videos of like I don't know, I just off the top of my head, I remember there being a video
Mhm.
of a kid wandering around like New Orleans near like the district where people get their tits out, and he saw there was like a in frame of the video there was like a chick that was like twerking and she had a big butt, and the kid just kind of like wandered by and didn't interact, but it was like, oh whoa, that kid got to see a nice ass, great. That's what the comment section looked like. It was like, oh haha, kid wandered a bit too close to the red
Yeah.
light area of New Orleans, huh. But like if that was anything trans or drag,
Yeah.
aesthetic or associate, you see something half that suggestive, and it's like, kill all
Well,
these
it's
people,
like the
all these
it's like
people.
yesterday on Twitter I saw this Matt Walsh baby thing like on Twitter and whatever, and I was like, it's so weird that like if there was like a trans girl like that Dylan Mulvaney woman or whatever, like if she the Bud Light girl, if she like made a baby like merch and then just sent that out, like bro, I would not stop seeing this for
The
like two
baby
weeks. Like,
diaper, baby flush. Yeah,
oh my god.
she would be hanged in the streets.
Oh,
They would
absolutely.
guillotine
Fucking on
her.
the in the guillotine, exactly. But like Matt does it, and I'm like, dude, he makes a baby toy, and it's got like a full, like it's his face as a beard, and I'm just like looking into it, and people tried giving me context, like he calls his people like the sweet baby something. I'm like, that's fucking weird. Like, I'm sorry, from the outside looking in, it's fucking weird. If somebody that you hated did that, the Daily Wire would have been running entire like day segments on that, you know?
Yeah, and you still
The
see
fuck?
like anytime a story goes on Twitter, like the Daily Loud or whatever, is like,
Mhm. Oh,
female
that's the worst
teacher.
account.
Oh, it's run by
What the
dogs
fuck?
and halfwits. Yeah, like posts an attractive woman going like, woman sentenced to 3 years for having sex with 13-year-old, and of course the comments are full of blue checkmark guys going like, where was she when I was a kid, and all these people, you check their comment, and
Yeah.
everything in their like feed history is like them going after trans people for all being groomers. Like, fuck you guys, you don't give a fuck about kids, you don't give a fuck about grooming, you don't give a fuck about any of this. You just are looking for
Yeah,
excuses.
because they
Anything.
get like exactly because like you look at the math, like if you genuinely cared about kids, you get mad at like any side being sexual towards like kids, right? Like I wouldn't want my kid to be at like some sexualized show regardless of whatever sexual orientation that person has. Like at the end of the day, like sex and kids, if you're hardline against it, you're hardline against it, period. You're not like preferentially towards one side. I've seen the same thing. Like anytime you cover a story, like I've covered a story about like EDP or something, and they're like, yeah, that guy. And then like another girl who's actually like there was this like one OnlyFans star, I'm pretty sure. She was like she had like sex with one of their fans, and their
It
fans
was
weren't
underage.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of sitting over there. I'm like, this is just bad. Like they should have been professional and like checked the IDs. You know what I mean? Like done something. That's bad. But it's like, people get into it and it's like, what's the problem here? I'm like, no, there is a problem, right? Like if we're going to talk about, sexual advancements towards kids, all of this behavior is bad. I'm not picking and choosing one or the other,
One
right?
of the
Like,
big red flags too is the GOP hates sex ed. When sex ed is like the one thing we have that we know reduces the abuse of kids, because a lot of kids that are sexually abused, it's like they're
they
being
don't
like
know they're
groomed,
being
right? They
abused.
don't
Yeah.
know. There's like a parent or an uncle or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Who's like, oh, haha, like let's do this, and then they go to sex ed and they're like, oh, holy shit, and that's what tells them. So when you get rid of sex
Yeah.
ed, now it's like, great, now like no one. So if it's their parents grooming them, they have
Yeah.
no one to tell them.
Well, it's also one of those things where it's like people complain about like teenage pregnancies and all this like extra stuff, right? It's like if anything, teaching kids about sexual education prevents a lot of those unnecessary teenage pregnancies and even STDs from spreading anyways. Like I just don't see the harm in it, period. Like people get into like what age should we be teaching kids? I'm like, yeah, you should probably wait until like, kids are a little bit older, but like at the end of the day, if you're teaching kids about like, sex ed, you're teaching kids about sex ed just so they don't make these mistakes
They're
earlier on
just
in their
simple
life.
stuff. Simple
Yeah.
stuff, right? Or even like
Yeah.
I think like the earliest stuff, right? I don't care if it's like first grade or whatever. No one can touch you like this without your permission.
Oh, well, like
Something like
consent
that.
stuff. Obviously, they should teach you. This is so weird when I see like people arguing about like when should they teach you consent. I'm like, consent should just be something that should be taught to you as soon as you're able to
Age
grasp, right? Like,
0. Yeah, the
yeah, you should
moment.
you shouldn't be like you should be told like you have the autonomy to let somebody touch you or not, right? Like, 'cause that's what happens. Is like you said, it's like there's sexual abuse that happens in a family and it happens internationally, right? Like you should be teaching kids it's like bad touch is bad touch. We were taught this when we were kids, right? Like bad touch is bad touch. You know, you go to the doctor, they're allowed to touch you in the bikini area, okay? Because that's the doctor, right? They're trying to make sure you're okay. Now it's like you can't even talk about that without people equating it to grooming or something. This is basic, you know.
Did
like,
you did you
sense.
see that I don't know the name of the guy or like even what show it was, but there was a conservative who was doing some kind of like podcast, in-person interview, political thing, whatever, and he was sharing an anecdote about how recently, as this was like evidence of wokeness in schools, a young son of his, like 10 years old maybe, he was going in for his nighttime hug with the son, and the son said, well, you can't touch me without my consent. And so I guess the kid learned about consent, like the concept.
He's like, wait,
and rather,
like what?
rather than the father say like the obvious, like, oh, well, do I have your consent to have a hug? Like, you know, instead the father tries to, and he like explains this over minutes, explain to the kid how consent doesn't matter or apply because he's his father. How is that the direction he took that poor kid?
Yeah, it's like it's like if my dad came in and gave me a hug, it's like you kind of understand consent, right? Like even implied consent, you get it. But if your kid is visibly uncomfortable, I mean, there's a lot of questions I should be asking. You don't teach a kid consent is bad. Like these people want to talk about like, you know, like if you want to like establish good, I get like if you want to stop a lot of bad things that happen because people don't understand consent, you tell them right from the beginning, right? Like you tell kids bad touch is bad touch. You got to get like, you know, permission. Because if you don't teach them at an early age, like what are they going to do by the time they're getting to high school or college or, you know, like when they're just young adults in general?
This is how a lot of girls get like up too in like early youth, either from groomers who are older or even people their own age. Like no, they get this general social instruction that women are supposed to be like submissive and like nice to guys, but they never really get any instruction.
Oh, dude,
on
that's
boundaries.
like that Just Pearly things on Twitter. Have you seen her?
No,
oh
I don't know
God.
what you're talking about.
Just Pearly things? Oh, dude. So she's like she's a Pearl Davis or whatever. She's insane, bro. It's like an AI that just like writes for Andrew Tate.
This chick. Oh, she's insane. I've talked about her. She is wild. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife showed me that, and I was just like, dude, how can this person just be the biggest pick me for some of the biggest pieces of shit? I don't get it.
A lot of it
like,
really is like
like
self-hate. It's like it's
a lot of it's
sad.
like girls have to be submissive. I'm like, I have never had this situation in any relationship I've been in where we had to like have this like submissive dominant relationship. And I'm a pretty traditional guy, right? Like, you know, I'm like a monogamous, you know, we do have gender roles in any relationship I'm with, but they're not like the hardline traditional.
We'll spare you
gender
when the
roles,
revolution
you know?
comes.
Yeah, like, but then I'm looking at this shit and I'm just like, dude, well, how can she just sit there and like just completely submit to a guy like that? I'm like, relationships don't work that way. Like, what the?
Well, the thing I mean, the sad thing is, it's kind of like a worse version of the 50 Shades of Grey effect, right? Where it's like, in reality, okay, like, are there plenty of couples where the woman's more submissive? Sure, but they try to extrapolate this into this broad Evo psych argument where it's like, well, it's women's place to, when in reality, if you're a guy and you're like a cool alpha male and you want a submissive girlfriend, look, it's not that hard to find them. But when you do this prescriptive thing where it's like, well, women who aren't doing this are wrong and they're violating their like natural role, then you get into this like broader political thing. And in reality, people should be able to choose stuff like that. And a lot of them do. There's not a crisis. There's not a lack of women who are submissive, you know?
I mean, there's ways you can have that relationship and have it be completely healthy. It's just like fucking when you're forcing yourself down that dynamic, it's just really, I don't know. It just, like forcing yourself into the dynamic is just a bad thing to do. Like my parents are in the most traditional relationship you'll ever see, right? Like you look at them and you'd be like, these guys were probably, they would have been great fits in the 50s, and that works for them, right? But you know, people have different, you know, strokes, I guess.
I mean, the historical weird. Like Christian attitude on this is like a girl is raised by her patriarchal father and then literally handed off to the husband, like when she's 18 or 19 or something, and now she's the possession of the husband. And that's like based literally like the attitude historically. it is the most concrete and most historically accepted like trend of grooming ever. But obviously Republicans want to keep this because we're literally talking about like conservative Christianity. So
Yeah.
it's mandated, and it's from
Well, that's why
birth.
you have some of those child marriage laws that still somehow those loopholes that still exist.
Yeah, that they
right?
still push for and defend. Yeah.
I just don't even get how that was even legal in the country. I always thought that was a hardline stance. It's like if you're unless you can't get married unless you're over age of consent, but you
Oh,
get surprised every
not
day, I
even
guess.
close. Oh no. I think Tennessee in particular has like tens of thousands of underage marriages every year. Maybe just thousands. It could be tens of thousands as an older figure.
Which should
Underage.
be illegal in my opinion, but hey,
But yeah,
like,
to sign a contract of eternal like oath to like yeah, just that all of that hands off. USA.
like marriage is one of those things where it's like you're getting somebody under the age of like 18, like when they're not like mentally capable of making this decision to agree to be like a breeder box for some guy for the rest of their life, you know? And same thing with like it's a weird system to get into. There's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to this side of the political spectrum.
Yeah, it's
Unfortunately,
nearly 300,000 minors were legally married in the U.S. between 2000 and 2018.
what?
So I guess that'd be 15,000 a
300,000?
year if you average it out.
Wow. I thought that I just don't even understand how this can be like recognized throughout the country, even like a marriage like this. But
I didn't consent to this. I didn't vote for these laws.
how old were the guys in that? Like, is there like any statistic on like the discrepancy?
I'm almost certain that in almost every case the guy's going to be older, but it doesn't in this stat that I'm looking at. It doesn't discriminate between 2 minors and 1 minor, 1 adult.
Is it like so? How does this even happen? Like the parents agree to this or something? Like,
Yeah.
is there like an agreement
It's
between?
it's a state thing. In some states, yeah, with like parental agreement, a young girl can be married. I say like girl, it could be a boy theoretically, but like it's not. Could be married off to an older guy. And in some, it's just like legal permission for like 2 16-year-olds to marry, or like Romeo and Juliet thing where it can be like a 16 to 18-year-old. I don't know. There might not be any stats on how many like minor, non-minor marriages there are.
That almost sounds so similarly close to back home in like India and shit. When you have like you have a lot of child marriages back home where I'm from. So I thought that was like a old school Indian thing, not like happening still to this day in the U.S. of A. But
hey,
Jesus
you're in
Christ.
Canada, right? I'm sure it's a little bit better up there. I hope.
I don't know. I went to my buddy's wedding and I had the wildest experience ever. So apparently at every wedding in Canada, it seems like besides the person that officiates it, they have like somebody from the government who like confirms that the wedding isn't happening under duress or something anymore. Like they just like
Oh, sorry.
yeah, like I was at a buddy's wedding and like they had another person who was just like, so this wedding is totally like it's completely legal, it's completely happening because both parties love and respect each other very much. And I was like, okay, this is kind of awkward, but
Okay,
ooh,
I found the
the
stat. It's 86% of the children married in that period of 300,000 were girls, and most were wed to adult men with an average of 4 years older. So yeah, I think if you average it all out, the average like marriage here would be like a 16-year-old girl and a 20-year-old guy, I think. So that's cool.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, no, that's falling into the Romeo and Juliet stuff, yeah.
I mean, it's not like a 12-year-old girl, 50-year-old guy, but like that's pretty fine. That's only the average, right? So there are going to be outliers depending on the depending on the thing, especially when you consider that a proportion of the people married would have been young boys. So with no age gap there, the mean age gap would have to be like skewed up to account for all the adult, like,
Right.
girl ones. I don't know how specific the statistics are. It's pretty bad.
Okay. I mean, it's just still weird that we're letting like any of that stuff. I just find it so weird that people are still like some of these politicians are so heavy, like hell bent on fighting this inside their like inside their like legislation.
I vote blue. Okay, I'm not on
Yeah,
this
but
one.
like
All right.
you're from where? You're California, yeah.
I'm Washington now, but yeah, it's like Nevada, Idaho, Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Wyoming, Utah, Alabama, West Virginia, Mississippi. It's all red states. Well, Nevada's not a red state. It's just known for having quick marriages. So yeah.
Nevada's like Las Vegas is blue. Everything else is red as.
Yeah, well, everything like the dust
Yeah,
devils out there, you know, it's
yeah.
like a couple of cities over there. I don't know, but people go to New Vegas because they can get a marriage like really, really quickly, I guess.
Well, you can get married in like 15 minutes out in Vegas. I don't know how legitimate that wedding is, but Jesus Christ.
Might also be a
No,
cultural thing. It's the
yeah.
Vegas wedding experience.
We were thinking of we were moving out to Nevada too, but then I drove through there on Route 66 once, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna write this state off entirely. Like, I don't even know how like dead it was when I drove through it.
Yeah, it's a
Did you
pretty
say New Vegas, by
depressing.
the way?
Well, hey,
Are
you
you
know
playing
what? That's
Fallout?
also where the UFOs are, right? So that's where people go to get their sightings in as well.
Bro, I think you're taking the like war room thinking hard. You're referencing Fallout straight up.
Wait, did I say New Vegas?
Yeah, you said New Vegas.
Okay, Las Vegas. All right, listen. Okay, I love my video games. All right, you love your
Listen,
video games.
it's gonna be a few months before the Chinese turn it into New Vegas.
Yeah, I'm just prepping for the near future when it will be renamed to that, just in keeping with the legacy, right?
Shit.
When the
Anyways,
Iran
man,
thing
good
finally
talking to you,
goes
dude.
south.
You know the thing about this UFO stuff, and I know why it's viewed so well, is like I have friends in my like life. Like one of my best buddies is an engineer. I play games with him all the time, and like he'll just like he's a super smart guy, but he gets into this conspiracy shit so hard. Like the UFO is like one thing, but then he gets into like flat Earth and like Agartha and all that shit. So I don't know, dude. It's a very popular subject on YouTube. There's so many conspiracy channels.
Yeah,
I laugh at them, but you know.
but it's like it's crazy because like it used to be like I don't know 20 years ago or something, right? Flat Earth
Yeah.
was like a joke thing, like everyone joked about it. It was
Mhm.
a meme, and now like flat earthers are just another wing of the QAnon like anti deep state
Mhm.
conspiracy. Like it all folds into this
I
broader
think it
agenda.
does. Like, I know chat's like the guy's not that smart. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm saying like he's smart. That like if you asked him an engineering question, the guy's like he knows his shit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, computer programmer will know like, you know, how to program something. That doesn't mean they're genuinely intelligent in everything. But like when it comes to a conspiracy person, everybody defaults for this. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole that keeps evolving and evolving. You know, it's where like we're at a stage of misinformation now that we just can't even get out of.
It's the
It
like
used to be this was harmless,
it's the
kind of.
government distrust thing that goes like way awry, right? Because like distrust the government's good. That's like a reasonable thing. But it has to be like, okay, well, why do we distrust the government? Like what actual reasons do we have? And then you get into like, I don't know, materialist analysis. Like what are the things they would actually want to keep from us? But then you have these like contrived, like they want to keep alien knowledge from us. And you remember the government leaks shit all the time. The last, like we had military secrets that were leaked like a month ago because some loser on Discord with no
Mhm.
permissions just dropped it to impress like Nazi friends, you know, that he played War Thunder with or something. You can't keep secrets like this, and why would they, right?
Well, like the thing with the government distrust, like it has to make sense, right? Like it comes back to the vaccine debate almost. Like, you know, people are like they put microchips and shit or like QR codes or something into your body, and I'm like, well, first off, why would they go the expensive route when you're carrying cell phones and stuff on you all the time, or they already have backdoors into like most of these social media services? It's like you got to be practical with your conspiracies, you know? Like I distrust the government, but I understand like the government is a massive wing. You know, it's a massive complex. There's a lot of people in there that are genuinely just cogs in the machine, and there's you know elements that are a little bit you know that you can distrust, right? Like you can't take the CIA for example seriously. You can't take a lot of these three-letter agencies at face value. I guess I don't know. It's hard to talk about distrust when it so easily veers off into like
It's
you
like
know.
informed distrust, right? Like a lot
Yeah,
of the
like you got to
stuff.
be intelligent.
Yeah, you can say like, okay, well, most of the stuff that ends up being true is stuff that fits within like publicly acknowledged lines of conflict. So like, is there a
Hmm.
conspiracy in the shape of like collusion between businesses and the government to promote the interest of billionaires? It's like, yeah, but that's not even a conspiracy. They do that like openly. They just
Wasn't that the whole like town hall with like Ron DeSantis guy like 2 days ago on Twitter?
they,
Like I'm one of those guys where you know how like for the last few years there were like Trump and like Russia and like all these organizations colluding and everything. I'm kind of like, isn't it that if any like tech company gets involved with like a politician, isn't that kind of like election tampering in a way? Like, wouldn't that? I don't know what the legalities in the states are, but I just look at it as super weird when
yeah.
like you got these billionaire corporate you know leaders
Well,
working with
Elon did this
politicians.
like a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago. He complied with Erdogan's demands to like censor some stuff
dude,
on Turkish
I
Twitter.
mentioned that on Twitter and like all the Elon stands were so like, you don't understand. They would have shut down Twitter. I'm like, and like, what do you think we've done to like China? It's like they've shut down Google in China and like any other company that wouldn't comply with their hardline censorship. It's like you can't claim to be a free speech absolutist and then comply to like Turkey, and then at the same breath keep shitting on like people with the Twitter files and like complaining about the U.S. government or like like so weird. Like he made a big deal about the Twitter files like months ago, and I was like, what happened in these? Because I feel like I was the only one that read it, like me and a couple other people. Because I'm like, what happened in these Twitter files that like showed, Twitter complying 100% with the government, and then how is that any different than like what happened with Turkey?
Well, because in a
Like,
lot of those Twitter files, you read it and it's like, okay, so the government had a committee and the committee made a subcommittee and the subcommittee made recommendations for like these posts are being disinfo and asked Twitter to remove them. And it's like, okay, like, should that be looked into? Okay. And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we just like Erdogan, a dictator, just straight up told Twitter to censor these accounts. And he did.
well, they're doing it with the Indian government too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm from India, so like being an Indian Muslim, it's like we're pretty much the most second class, like unrecognized citizens there now. Like the government wants to straight up remove any history of Indian Muslim people
And
because of their
in
like
a lot of
insane
ways,
right wing government.
Twitter is folding easier than a lot of other like, social media companies, right? I think
Dude,
that
it's insane. Like even Facebook, we shit on Facebook all the
yeah.
time, but I'm like, dude, Facebook still doesn't capitulate to this level. I mean, shit.
I thought the funniest
Or
thing was
really
that he like announced what his terms were. He was like, well, obviously I had to fold because they threatened to remove Twitter altogether. So like now any other authoritarian government could just be like, oh, so that's his price. And now like Twitter is now essentially like globally compromised. I don't think there's any reason to assume in the sincerity of any like discourse you see on there when the guy who runs it is so openly partisan and willing to collaborate with leaders.
He wanted to be one of those guys where it's like, I want to be apolitical and everything. And I'm like, but you're completely against your apolitical stance when you're like capitulating to one side of the political wagon more than the other, It's like, it's funny because they used to accuse Twitter of being heavily leftist, which I guess one could argue that there might have been a bias. Like, I know people always brought up the TOS, but I'm like, I don't know. It'd always be like the right-wing accounts that were actually violating the TOS, which is why they were getting banned. But that's a whole different story. Now it's just like the whole platform has turned into like, hey, if you're in the Republican or right-wing side of the government, just here's a big platform to just signal boost whatever you want on.
Yeah, the algorithm just plays towards that over there, and a lot of young people don't even bother with Facebook anymore. So it doesn't. There's not like an organic pushback or anything.
Well, there's no Facebook. There's no like. I mean, even like a lot of these newer platforms like TikTok is where most of like younger people are getting any of their news, anyways.
I hate TikTok. TikTok's also full of this UFO shit.
TikTok
is
esoteric
weirdness.
TikTok is like I firmly do believe with like it being like a AI attack on everyone else but Chinese individuals because they don't even like let TikTok operate in China. They have like a cooler version or like a cleaner version that operates there without any of the bullshit,
I genuinely hate TikTok more than any other social media app, even Facebook, just because I think like promoting info exclusively in the format of like 60-second videos is guaranteed brain rot no matter what. People said that about everything, right? But like you can like YouTube, right? People said that about YouTube, like, oh, well, this isn't a documentary on the BBC. There is lots of really great educational stuff on YouTube. Limiting the format to an incredibly short video blur basically guarantees you're not going to get that, like, ever,
I've seen it happen. Like it's kind of with my ability to like process information, I find, especially short form content, because it's kind of pushed people in a way where like they instantly react to content as it happens, right? Like we're kind of forced to react to these 60-second, 120-second pieces of video that have a lot of context usually stripped out from them. I feel like a lot of and it's not just TikTok, it's like YouTube Shorts, like Instagram Reels, all this short form content that just like, I don't know, has changed the way, like changed attention spans, honestly, for like everyone. It's not even just kids, like even we're all privy to this kind of bullshit, unfortunately, as sad as it
whenever
is.
I notice myself doing that, like on TikTok or YouTube Shorts, where it's like 60-second flip to the next one, 60-second flip to the next one, like no thought, no engagement, just sort of mindlessly consuming the stuff that I'm flipping through. I try to like break myself out of that because like people lose a lot of time. It's like the worst possible version of mindless scrolling because it consumes your thoughts entirely, but it's so numbing.
Well, it's like it's even affected the way I watch like YouTube content because like I swear before like TikTok, I wasn't like always hitting the right key on my keyboard just to skip through like a YouTube video. And I'm like, oh, if 5-10 minute YouTube video, let's just keep going. I guess. Jesus Christ.
Our brains are
I don't know.
fucking cooked. It's over. It's over. We're done.
I don't know, man. AI is gonna replace us and like the worst thing. But yeah, back to this like UFO dude. This is insane. You keep scrolling by and it just never ends. It's like the
No,
most,
and this
like,
guy's been on a
popular
bunch of
shit.
times before, apparently. But yeah, I didn't realize they had this many. I swear it's gotten worse lately, though.
Is he like what credibility does he have though? Is he like a ufologist or something? Like that's what they call
He's
him,
like an
right?
esotericist. Apparently, he was an artist and fashion designer and yoga/martial arts guy. He's nothing. It's literally he just jumps from thing that gullible people care a lot about to the next thing.
I mean, the thing is with like UFOs, it's like it's kind of a harmless conspiracy. It is a very harmless conspiracy theory because it's like, oh, cool, possible life on the exteriors, but it's like there's like these guys want to talk about UFOs, but they apply no science or like critical thinking. Like you're a conspiracy theorist without critical thinking. Like you were saying, there could be drones. Like I have, I have lights that show up outside my house that don't appear to be moving, but then I'm like, oh, I'm in a flight path, like directly in a flight path. It's not going to look like it's moving to me. These lights look like they are, and if anything, it's just like a military exercise, dude. You're in the U.S. Like you're in the U.S. Like that's the only country with like the craziest aerial show in the world.
It
Don't be
always
surprised.
it always feeds into that anti-deep state stuff, though. The idea that the state has all these like
Oh,
secrets. Because, like, again, I like distrust of the state, right? But I
dude,
like
that's
it
my uncle right there.
when it's like
Deep
structured,
state.
like from a Marxist perspective, a distrust from the state is that it's a bourgeois democracy. So naturally they
Mhm.
promote the ideology and interests of the bourgeoisie. But that's not a conspiracy. It's the nature of the that's not a bug, it's a feature. But then when you get into this like, well, what else are they hiding from us? And like I don't think a lot. There's some like corpo shit and there's some like intel like reconnaissance shit for the most part, but like aliens? Why? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Aliens are such a weird thing because like it's like a lot of conspiracies, right? Like okay, as a world, we always like go at each other's throats over stupid shit, right? But somehow we're able to contain these massive secrets of flat Earth and like aliens being hidden in military bases together. You know what I mean? Like it's so weird how people believe that. For like we like as human beings in the different nations, we can't get along on the simplest shit, but somehow we can agree that these are secrets that should be held no matter what, right?
Do people really want there to be aliens? I mean, I guess I do too. It'd be pretty cool. But
I mean, look, aliens exist. Let's not pretend we're
oh,
the only
right.
intelligent life. Yeah, but like,
Somewhere, I'm sure.
but the way that they're chilling at Area 51 and being like, examined is it's a little bit too much. Also, it's like the way that these guys always describe aliens. It's the same like gray alien. They all look the same. I'm like, why can't they be cool like Mass Effect aliens or something? Like some uniqueness to it.
Yeah, go out on a limb and get like ostracized from the UFO community because you're insistent that aliens are actually all like 16-foot bug creatures. Like the gray alien paradigm, Go with something creative. We're the
Like
space bitches.
how do people even take this so seriously? Like this kind of guy. Like I'm looking at one of his videos right now, and it's none of it screams credibility, like at all. It's just the guy is just throwing shit at a dartboard, hoping it sticks. I guess.
I just want to know, like, I'm looking at the subreddit right now, and if I like click on any of these posts, will I have somebody explain why this matters? Like why any of this matters?
No, you won't. It's like the flat earthers, dude. Like they will always have like they always shift the goalposts and like bring up some new evidence that just gets counter debunked. Like there's one YouTube channel that I love. It's like Professor Dave, and like he'll just debunk all these guys like within an hour, and they have no counter to it. But then
What's
they just come up with some new evidence, and then what are you gonna do? You're gonna sit in there and disprove some other bullshit over and over and over again?
sorry, what's so magic about element 115? I've never been very convinced of the famous element 115 narrative. Something something gravity field distort space-time warp bubble. The top reply is, if I recall correctly, it's the way the element is used in a pyramidical structure that replenishes its decay automatically. It's 100% efficient. What the fuck is this?
Is that something from like that Bob Lazar guy?
I mean, it all bleeds together. It's an
It's
element
fucking
from
who
XCOM.
the fuck is like it's the same Bob Lazar dude. I think he showed up on Netflix or some documentary or whatever the fuck it
Why
is.
do I
And
recognize this name? Bob
Because
Lazar.
he was like popular like
Oh,
2 years ago.
yeah. Okay, I've seen this guy.
He did like some documentary, and that's pretty much what it came down to. I don't like. The thing about it is like nobody critically thinks about any of this. Like it's like if you have like the five like lights in the sky that weren't moving, like you could have been like it could have just been drone technology that was being tested. You know, like well, how can you like? It really is like the biggest example of he said she said because you're never going to be able to prove what the government was doing in secret. So these guys will just assume that it's some secret alien project when in reality the truth is obviously far more grounded in like Area 51. People are always freaked out about it, but I'm like, if you look at the history of Area 51, that's where I believe they tested the Blackbird and like the suborbital like spying craft they used against
Yeah,
the
it's just a
Soviets back in
regular
the
like
day.
Air Force base. Like, yeah, we of course we have secret projects at the federal level. Obviously, we have top end
Yeah.
military tech we keep secret, but that's not like it. That in itself isn't a conspiracy. It's just a state secret. That's not like a magical thing. And the only way these aliens ever make themselves evident is by like hovering in the air. Like nothing ever happens that could only be explained with alien tech. It's always just like, oh, well, there's a light in the sky. Well, unless I see a photo in 4K of it being a drone, it has to be some other thing, you know?
Yeah, and like if we had alien like UFO craft to test and shit, do you think we'd really be doing it in Nevada where like the average civilian may be able to spot this technology from far, far away? No, they probably do it in some other black site we don't know about, you know?
I'm sure we have one in
Like
like
this.
Alaska or something. Of course we do. We have stuff everywhere. God only knows, you know?
Yeah, it's like I don't know. These people are always like focused on stupid shit when they should be focused on like something more like interesting, like the cyber attack world that we have, like the cyber world we're living in right now, dude. Like, did you hear about what happened with like the Chinese government?
Well, I've heard a couple things about the Chinese government. Probably not the thing you're
Well,
referring to, though.
in the last couple days, it was like Microsoft that brought up how like a couple of critical infrastructure sites in Guam got hit. So I'm kind of sitting over there with like the actual tinfoil hat on, going,
Guam.
man, I wonder if they're prepping for Taiwan or some shit.
Cybersecurity. China's stealthy hackers infiltrate U.S. and Guam critical infrastructure. Nice. Love that.
I feel like this is like kind of an act of war. I feel like that's something that the like we should kind of be punishing a little bit more heavily. And it's not as easy as obvious to go after, but like I don't know, man. Like for the last a year and a half, I've been covering this stuff pretty heavily, and it is genuinely scary to see like how bad and how like prevalent this has gotten. And like a lot of these like we do it too, obviously to other countries. Let's not pretend we're clean of it, but it's just these cyber attacks can be genuinely damaging in the long term. And like the way that they're preparing for even larger attacks through these like small infiltrations, it's just I mean these are acts of war, man. I'd be freaked out. Like this is where you should actually be scared of what's going on in the world instead of like UFOs and other,
I guess
you know,
the
red
precedent
herrings.
of like this kind of cyber attack, it would be kind of like saying that having a spy in your country is an act of war, right? Like it's considered more covert, so it doesn't have the because we have a really arbitrary standard for declaring war, right? Like
Hmm.
firing missiles into their territory, sending troops, that's declaring war, sure. But like funding, like with Ukraine, right? Like we give arms to Ukraine, which they use on Russia, and that's not
Yeah.
us declaring war on Russia. And everyone agrees on this, basically. It's like internationally accepted. As long as a US boot doesn't actually like participate there in the capacity of a member of our armed forces, then we're fine. But then with this, it's like, well, where would you draw the line on a cyber attack? Would any kind of infiltration count, or would it be like taking down servers? I have no idea where that line could even be
The,
drawn.
the thing about like a cyber attack is it's kind of like how I look at the military industrial complex. You know, it's like, yeah, the US boots don't have to step on the ground, but it's like, at what point is like a mercenary group like the Wagner Group or like any of these like US defense contractors any different? You know, it's like you're kind of just it's like a proxy war, right? Like you're just putting a it's the same boots. It's just you have that plausible deniability to go off of. Like a lot of these countries will accuse other countries of like these being state hacking groups, like nation state groups. And at that point, it's like, if you've got the resources to launch these kind of attacks with impunity, right? That's pretty much a dead giveaway. The government is doing it against another government, and I think that is an act of war, right? Like, it's a new form of warfare, sure, but I think the damages are kind of all the same. Getting access into a country's like, critical infrastructure, their servers that host millions upon millions of data entries on actual like nationals, in my opinion, is an act of, mass surveillance, spying. And again, it is an act of war. I just wish like we kind of treated it the same way.
But I guess as long as nobody considers it an act of war, it's not, right? Because that is always going to be like a socially determined thing.
Right.
I,
I think it's like bullets aren't being fired, so I guess, it's not war as what we traditionally see it, right?
and I mean, it might be for the better. I feel like, because we probably don't want to establish any boundaries for warfare. That would make it really easy for us to get into war with China.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty bad, I think.
Well, it's not so much I think just you should declare war, because yeah, that is pretty bad. Like if we just start a battle over stuff like this, that happens on a daily basis. I feel like the government and like a lot of these like organizations should take bigger stances on this. Maybe like actually push more sanctions on other countries over stuff like this. Make it a bigger deal, right? Like don't go to war, but like definitely bigger slaps on the wrist, so to speak.
Yeah, I wonder how much you could reasonably do with China, because China is so economically right now. And it looks like the whole Taiwan thing is just like a nationalist pretext for maintaining, I don't know, patriotic fervor in spite of like the economic situation going downhill. I don't know how much diplomacy or like any incentive could push China out of the direction they're headed right now. It seems
I'm not
kind
so
of
keen on
preset.
what's going on with the Chinese economy at the moment. I know they're because of, COVID as well too over in their country. They're also because of are they still doing lockdowns over there? Like
They
the
they
heavy.
they like just abruptly removed the lockdowns and a bunch of people got COVID again. But as a product of the one child policy, they're about to run into this wall where a huge portion of their population is going to need to be supported because they're in retirement age, and not enough young people are being born now to
Oh, so
support
it's
them.
like Japan.
It's
Like
it's
fucking
worse. If you look at the population distribution in China, it looks like a fucking mushroom right now with how many older people there are. Um,
Jesus
it's
Christ.
really bad. It's going to their economy so bad, and it makes me wonder if that's like why they're gearing up for Taiwan, because maybe that'll keep people, I don't know, distracted. That's what war is good
I
for.
I would always imagine they were gearing up with Taiwan because of what we're doing with the semiconductor manufacturing, like shifting it back over here. That was kind of like the one, silver bullet around in the world. It's just like most of the semiconductor stuff, most of this technological like development was happening in one centralized location. Now that we're kind of dipping out, I think they're kind of on the expectation that we're not going to go in and protect Taiwan, or they're going to lose sort of their own foothold that they've had,
It's
from what
so
I
crazy that
understand.
we let that happen.
I mean, I like the thing about it is like when we're moving a lot of that development back home, I can see it. Obviously, like I can see the big benefit for it, and obviously, like having the development back home is a lot better than having the development, overseas where it's not completely under your control. But
In
yeah, for them it's
Taiwan,
fucking terrible.
right off the coast. Like, yeah, I don't know. That was pretty insane. Um, just leaving it like that. Yeah, we fucked up so
I
badly with China. Like on so many levels, we made mistakes.
I'm actually just like super worried for the Taiwanese, especially after like reading about these cyber attacks in Guam, because I'm just wondering if like China's so brave to like make that the next Ukraine, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like push in and take over. Because the Taiwanese are a strong people, but going up against again a global superpower is just not going to be a.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
not
that.
easy.
I mean, we are in a defensive alliance with Taiwan. So, like, theoretically, if they were invaded, we're kind of by treaty obligated to defend them, not just by
Yeah,
giving them weapons, but by sending our military to intervene, which would be
yeah.
an interesting development in the global stage. I think that.
I mean I mean, like, as soon as you get U.S. boots and Chinese boots going against each other, I mean, you might as well just fucking pretend. We might as well already start saving up bottle caps, I guess. Jesus.
Yeah, I don't like that one at all, especially since I'm on the West Coast. Where do you live?
Dude, I live in Toronto, dude, but I mean, I live in the West Coast from time to time as well. So I mean, I'm regardless.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you ever come over to Vancouver, you'll catch a whiff of our fallout.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I'm close to New York City, so with the bombs that they've got, I mean, I'm still feeling it. Jesus Christ.
Well, maybe it won't happen. I mean, China hasn't
I
been too like
I
gung
hope
ho
it doesn't
about
happen, dude.
Ukraine.
Like I try to be so positive about the world, and I really am. Like part of me is like, listen, I really hope there is like this crazy deep state in every country, like Metal Gear Solid style, working together. Because then, like at least a deep state, they want us to work for them. They want us to be slaves, and you can't. You'd rather have us as slaves than be dead in nuclear fallout, right? Like shit.
Yeah, we want to believe that there's always like a group of rational actors who are at the
Mhm.
end of the day keeping hold of things. I guess that's probably pretty comforting to a lot of the people who believe in it, as opposed to just the world is chaotic and bad things can happen with with basically no warning at any
I mean,
time.
like in a world where you've got like the people holding 1%, like all the wealth, like the 1%, it's like at least make it so like, hey, listen, if we're gonna have such a shitty level of wealth distribution, at least make sure the sun comes up tomorrow and we get to, you know, go from our pod to pod and like live.
Yeah, be a
Than
good
this
patron of your
bullshit.
slaves, you assholes. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
exactly. Like you're gonna enslave us, so at least fucking be nice about it. I shit.
Oh, speaking of nuclear threats, did you hear about the nuclear refinement facility that they built 300 feet under the mountains of Iran so that it couldn't be attacked by Israeli saboteurs?
What? What? No, this isn't new. What the?
Yeah, they it was built recently because back in like 2019 there was a centrifuge uranium refinement facility that got blown up, which they blamed on Israel, and it was definitely Israel.
Mhm.
So they built the next one deep, deep, deep underground, so far deep underground that bunker buster bombs and
What?
even nuclear carpet bombing wouldn't be able to destroy it. And yeah, they're doing some refining down there. They're churning the big centrifuge.
What the? Dude, I just looked up Iran nuclear, so I'm glad that I'm on a watch list again. But Jesus Christ, it's like Iran unveils latest version of ballistic missiles amidst wider tensions.
Oh, that
Like,
was 2 days ago. Yeah, yeah. They're also
oh
testing
my God.
2,000-mile range missiles. Can be fitted with 150.
I'm just so shocked that we're still, as a species, developing nuclear weapons. Like, I get the whole deterrent theory, but I just get so like the anxiety goes up to an 11 for me when I see us all have like bombs that can wipe off our species in like minutes. You know?
Well, I support the Iranian People's Republic in their anti-imperialist war against American and Israeli aggression. I say Godspeed. Now we can truly have multipolarity in our
I,
global
I'm
power
I
balance.
thought we had a deal with them. Maybe I'm mistaken since the Trump era or
He
some shit.
canceled
Like
it.
he tried to. Oh wait, who canceled it? He
Trump
did.
Trump canceled it. He just canceled it.
Oh, oh Jesus
Yeah, it
Christ!
was a pretty good deal too. We're not getting that one back. Oh, it's been a
Yeah,
delight to talk to you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very
right.
much for hopping on.
Yeah, man. Take care, brother. You have a good one.
Take care. May no nukes visit our backyards anytime
May
soon.
no nukes hit us, but if they do, let's save up the bottle caps.
Take care.
Take care.